China, a country the size of Europe, with every kind of landscape. Every kind of habitat, every kind of climate, and where animals of many different types rare, exquisite, and endangered live in unique ecosystems, in remote isolation, and alongside people. But today, both these habitats and the extraordinary species who live within them are increasingly faced with challenges. As people race to find solutions, to preserve China's wild beauty. Forest, the largest ecosystem on land. A landscape dominated by an unbroken expanse of trees. Some capable of living thousands of years, others grow at a rate of almost a metre a day, to reach heights of 200 metres. Forests are our planet's lungs. They play a crucial role in stabilising the global climate, converting carbon dioxide into oxygen. Humans and wildlife could not survive without trees. And here in China, the variety of forest and the biodiversity it gives life to is startling. With her swampy rainforest in the south and her towering evergreens in the north, each home to rare species, playing, breeding, and surviving. Above the treetops, under the camouflage of the canopy, and on the forest floor, crossing the entire expanse of China. But this precious habitat is vulnerable, and every effort is now being made to preserve it and the species born into its ecosystem. Winter in the far north of China. The forest floor is blanketed in a thick layer of beautiful snow, concealing all ground vegetation. It's a challenging time to find food. Especially for the most vulnerable animals, the young and old, who struggle to survive. This is a family of wild boar. They're specially adapted to the task of foraging in winter. Her long snout, backed by the power of her big head, acts like a plough, so she can dig up to 10 centimetres into frozen ground and lift up heavy rocks to uncover the juicy insects living underneath. Her bawlet trailing behind, born in warmer weathers, has just been weaned and is today learning the ropes from its mother, building up the vital neck and head muscles needed to uncover lunch. But other hoofed animals don't fare so well in winter. Deer use their hooves to clear snow away from plants. They graze on grasses and dwarf shrubs, coniferous tree shoots. But they have a poor sense of smell, and so in deep snow can find it difficult to locate vegetation. In times of desperation, they even resort to eating tree bark. A breeding centre has been set up deep in the heart of the forest to boost numbers. Here, a population of sika deer bred in captivity are thriving and preparing for release and life in the wild. This male buck is in demand, living in a harem of does, female deer. He shed his antlers in December following a drop in testosterone after the mating or rutting season. They'll be fully grown again by the summer. The deer's natural skittishness and intense sense of hearing will be useful survival tools when they need to protect themselves in the wild. Their large rotating ears are perfectly shaped to detect even the faintest of sounds with pinpoint precision. But these spotted deer have been bred for a higher cause: to feed the Siberian tiger, the most elusive resident of this forest and one of the world's most critically endangered species. Now numbering just 27 in the wild in China. Winter for these few remaining Siberian tigers is beyond tough. Wind and snow wipe off much of their prey's trails and scent. The Siberian tiger's bold markings leap out in stark contrast to the white of the snow, alerting its prey to the predatory intention and the imminent danger. There is almost no foliage left on the trees and shrubs, so concealing himself while hunting is impossible. And to add to his problems, in winter he'll need to consume more food than usual to maintain energy and body temperature in the bitter climate. The Siberian tiger is facing a precarious future. His survival is now in the hands of Park Ranger Lao Yen and his forest patrol team, who spend the winter living in remote isolation in Dahwango Forest, not far from the border with North Korea, where they monitor the every movement or faintest track left by the Siberian tiger. They input coordinates of the last known sightings and carry measuring tools so that they can assess the age of the few remaining tigers based on the size of any footprints they come across. Most importantly, they pack flares. They are going deep into the forest and deep into tiger territory. The tiger is the top of the food chain, but his survival depends on the survival of all species, from the bottom up. The team is determined to support the wildlife in this forest struggling most with the extreme weather and food shortages. And winter is the busiest time of year for Lao Yen's squad. They abandon the vehicle and set off on foot, sensitive not to alarm any of the creatures living in this remote and peaceful habitat. They're careful not to let their work affect the behaviour of the forest's inhabitants, wanting this habitat to remain untouched by man. and other efforts have been made to assist them in protecting the forest. All hunting and logging is now banned to help the ecosystem flourish. They enter in silence, stealth-like, walking in single file to minimize footprints. They are the unsung heroes of wildlife conservation. Their first stop is a feeding station, where they put corn in the feeding trough, a high-carbohydrate diet to keep up the animals' energy in the winter. And Lao Yen hangs a block of essential minerals and salts. This food bank is predominantly for the hoofed animals, especially the wild sika deer. They can survive for up to a month without any food, but a loss of more than 20% of their body weight in winter would signal disaster. Next comes Lao Yen's favourite moment of the day, checking the recordings on their infrared cameras. These record any activity round the feeding station. It's an important piece of evidence, recording which animals are living in this corner of the forest, and they are encouraged by the footage. The station attracts a host of animals, mainly deer, but also boar, a badger, and a bear. But as he spools through the footage, he finds something remarkable. The Holy Grail. A lone Siberian tiger recently prowled through this very clearing. One of the last surviving individuals left in the wild on the planet. And he looks like a very healthy specimen, confirming everyone's hopes. The future of his existence is now firmly in the hands of the rangers, who have designated this and other forests protected land, to be inhabited by the planet's rarest and most elusive species.
I think that's an interesting thing.
This one piece will make 52 layers.
Watch on mobile devices or the big screen. All for free. No subscription required.
This is a secret piece of wild China. The awe-inspiring karst scenery of the Mayang River Nature Reserve in China's Guizhou province. Where bizarre-looking limestone peaks jut out from the ground. Carved out through erosion over millennia, each mound blanketed in subtropical forest. The limestone is porous, and so water isn't retained in the soil here, but disappears deep underground. Yet miraculously, these forests give way to both rich vegetation and a thriving ecosystem, in part also due to the calcium richness of the rocks. Many species of animal, bird and plant found living in this limestone ecosystem are adapted only for life in this isolated habitat. They would struggle to survive outside their own small range. Here, there is very little surface water, few rivers or lakes. But thanks to a vast underground network of caves and pools, the trees in this forest are flourishing on this rocky patch of the earth. Some of the plants found here depend on their strong roots to absorb moisture from the depths of the earth through tiny crevices in the rocks, while others absorb moisture directly through their leaves from the damp and humid air. The area is rich in endemic species that are unique to here, having adapted only for life in these conditions. But they all compete for access to the limited yet vital resources. Flowering plants are especially rare in the karst forest. This Japanese banana flower produces clusters of tubular flowers, only in the months of August and September. Deep within each flower is the sweetest and largest single supply of nectar found in the forest. A vital source of food and hydration, shared and fought over by bird, butterfly, and wasp. The plant produces its irresistible nectar to attract attention from these would-be pollinators, who unknowingly transfer the fine powdery pollen from male flowers to female flowers while feeding on the nectar. This fork-tailed sunbird's downward curved bill is perfect for extracting the nectar from deep within the flower. His breeding season coincides with the time when his favourite food bears fruit. Like a hummingbird, he's able to extract nectar by hovering close to the plant. But this chap doesn't yet have those skills and is finding the menacing presence of the wasps too much to handle. He flies away to scour the dense forest for any other flowering plants. But no resource is more precious or more hotly contested in this forest than water. And the athletic Francois Langa needs more than most species sharing its habitat. An extended family with one dominant male, several females, and their offspring live along the banks of the shallow and seasonal Maryang River. With direct access to the mountain's most reliable source of surface water. This is one of the world's rarest monkeys. Found only in subtropical forests in the limestone geology in southwest China, Vietnam and Laos. There has been a steady decline in the population over the past 30 years, and today there are just 2,000 left on the planet. 550 of them live here in the nature reserve, enclosed on all sides by thick forest. It's late morning in August, and this male and his troop use the natural features of the limestone karst scenery to their full advantage. The family live a very comfortable life in these rocky caves and cliffs that are inaccessible to his enemies, tiger and eagle. But they're not beyond the climbing abilities of this plucky mountain goat. Entirely unthreatening, but disarmingly confident. His bleats send one of the younger family members into a panic. The Langa's diet is primarily made up of leaves. But he won't eat any old leaves on offer in this vast forest. The langur is a picky eater Studies show them to have preferences for a very small range of leaves. Some of his favourites are the dwarf ylang-ylang and the brown beech. But mature leaves are difficult to digest. So here, in this remote forest, an evolutionary adaptation has taken place over the course of thousands of years. The Francois Langa has acquired a complex stomach, made up of 3 separate chambers, each hosting different vital bacteria needed to break down the leaves. But this plant diet does not provide them with much energy. And so these langas are often rather lethargic. And spring into action only when access to the forest's rarest commodity, water, is threatened. This troop control access to this river. It's their territory, and they are unwilling to share it with anyone. But they aren't the only troop in this part of the forest. Guards are posted to keep lookout in the trees. But the hypnotic buzz of the cicadas is too much for some, and this young Langa has been lulled into a state of slumber. Neglecting its duties, but enjoying a moment's nap. Until awoken with a startle by a loud shriek. That resonates and vibrates throughout the forest. It knows the noise to be a declaration of war. Turf war. 2 intruders from a neighbouring troop are arrogantly skirting around the water's edge. These trespassers belong to a rival troop living on the other side of the Ma Yang River. The forest shakes with movement. As our family rush down from the treetops to defend their precious strip of water and their community's honour, they perform aerial acrobatics as they hurtle from branch to branch, flying through the layers of trees. They bare their sharp canines, teeth designed only for intimidation, as they're entirely unnecessary for a diet of leaves. Francois Langa are sociable primates, but only amongst their own troop. The invaders are forced to retreat and run back to their side, at great speed. Some members of our victorious troop remain by the river to await the next ambush, when they must once again defend their plot. The water's edge is a common battleground here along the Ma Yang River, with many species like this blue-fronted redstart laying in wait for its prey. He lives by the water, awaiting insects who venture here for refreshment. This butterfly has scarcely touched the surface of the water when he's snatched ashore and the redstart prepares his meal. Within seconds, the butterfly's flapping wings are removed and only his protein-rich body remains. The allure of the water sealed this butterfly's fate. With the Langa family's patch secured, for now at least, the remainder of the troop, mostly females, retreat back to their cave dwellings. Despite having thwarted the intruder, they return with vigilance and suspicion, keen not to be followed back, for they have something else to protect back in the caves. These monkeys are polygynous breeders, with the largest, most aggressive male mating with several females in a season. And he's clearly been successful this year. His various babies, one per female, were born stunning orange just a few weeks ago. This is thought to be a protective measure for the vulnerable young, too weak to defend themselves. Bright colours in nature indicate danger or poison, and so his orange fur deters eagles and other would-be predators. The first 20 days of his life are spent clinging to the underside of his mother, feeding and sleeping at will and drawing comfort from the contact. As he gets used to life in the forest, he'll gradually gravitate to clinging to her back. She reinforces their bond in all kinds of ways. She grooms him, she scratches him, she carries him everywhere. Already his tail is turning black. Soon he will be entirely black. But he won't reach maturity until he's 2 years old. After that, his future in the group comes down to his sex and reproductive prowess. There's only room in this community for one dominant male, and competition is not welcome. Female infants are born with more certainty about their future status. There is always a place in the troop for a fertile female or nurturing auntie to share the babysitting and child-rearing. But when this male reaches sexual maturity, he will either be forced out of this troop or state a challenge and overthrow the current monkey king, his father. In this forest, the rains are very welcome, bringing a release to the humidity. Small pools of water collect on the leaves. And what isn't evaporated eventually trickles down from the monkey's treetop spot. Along the way, it passes carbonated rocks that filter the water before it then emerges at the depths of the forest floor as springs. To be enjoyed by this male silver pheasant, and his flock of brown females. Their brown markings provide them with camouflage against the rocky floor, and even their bright legs blend in with the autumn colours and leaves. But his striking appearance stands out from the environment and is designed for another purpose altogether. It's taken him 2 years to grow this elegant set of full plumage, but as a terrestrial bird, his elaborate feathers are largely ceremonial. In his society, the most beautiful male, with the finest plumes, owns all the females. A cherished commodity. The remoteness of this location is what preserves its biodiverse uniqueness and ensures it is home to some of the rarest and most insular creatures on the planet. But 1,000 kilometers northeast of this subtropical landscape, in a paddy field and working farm carved out of a clearing in the forest, is another most rare sighting. A crested ibis. She's come down from her treetop habitat in the neighbouring forest with a striking red head and pink underfeathers. These birds were the prized possession in Chinese courts, where for hundreds of years they proudly roamed palace grounds. But today these once revered birds are teetering dangerously on the brink of extinction. This paddy field provides her and her family with all the food they need. The land is initially churned up by water buffalo, who writhe about on the wet ground, their strong horns and massive bodies helping the farmers to plough the land. And this process in turn exposes lots of insects and small creatures. A boon for our wading ibis. She uses her curved bill to peck and store food living in the water-saturated ground. Amphibians, crustaceans, fish and insects. But she's not eating, she's storing the catch in her esophagus because she's got family waiting for her back at the nest. And she's not the only one enjoying the rich pickings on offer here. While today this paddy field is offering up a great source of food for the crested ibis, its numbers are dangerously low. 20 years ago, only 7 were thought to be left in the wild. Numbers plummeted as its habitat shrunk, and trees were chopped down to make way for farmland. But the crested ibis is also caught up in a complex, vicious circle. It chooses only to live and nest in the outer patches of forest, closest to paddy fields, the very areas most likely to be cleared next. Their life has been defined by displacement, and with each move, their numbers decline, These birds once existed in such huge numbers in the paddy fields in the great rice-eating countries of China, Japan and Korea that they were considered a pest due to crop damage, and so they were culled. For over a decade, a massive conservation effort has been underway in China, with wonderful results. This mother takes flight and returns to her young. Nesting high up in a conifer tree, in a sturdy structure of twigs, on the edge of the forest in Dongjai Nature Reserve. She feeds them directly into their mouths with food she's carried from the paddy field in her enlarged esophagus. Her infants' faces are salmon pink, while their mother's is deep red. With all the food finished, she returns for more fishing in the paddy field below. She was bred in captivity but released into the wild just a few years ago. Her young are the first generation of wild crested ibis, bred in the forest and now, once again, being born into their natural and wild habitat. Female ibis always lay 2 eggs, and luckily for her, this time both have hatched successfully. Their nest is a sturdy structure made of thick branches in the tops of trees overlooking their feeding ground. The young are yet to fend for themselves. They haven't flown the nest. And so they keep themselves entertained and exercised, unfolding their wings to both regulate their body temperature and practice their balancing skills. They keep themselves warm, standing on one leg, tucking the other into their body, and so reducing heat loss by about a half. This infant is tired of waiting and slots its head into its neck for a nap. But he's rudely awoken by the noise of a neighbouring farmer and her animals. Today, local farmers and crested ibis now live in harmony with one another. And the farmers make every effort not to harm these precious birds. no longer using fertilizer or pesticides in their fields. And so the prospects for this crested ibis are looking up. All these efforts to protect this species from vanishing are really paying off. Living in a tiny area of this forest is China's small but vitally important colony of semi-wild crested ibis. 1,000 birds are needed for a population to exist in the wild without human help. But it is likely that in several decades we might once again witness the flares of colour in the sky as their pink wings soar overhead. Autumn in the northeastern province of Jilin. Rolling mountains carpeted in hardy weather-enduring trees. Home of the Siberian tiger. The snows have melted to reveal a rich biodiversity on the forest floor. Like the coral fungus and brightly coloured spores, and a field of the rare low-level creeping pine. Few ever get to witness these wonders due to the endangered species living here and the fragility of their ecosystem. This is a secret natural world, much treasured in China, and home to one of the oldest trees in China. This 40-metre tall Chinese yew has been growing here for nearly 1,000 years. But today a privileged few are invited in to this heavily protected coniferous forest, where they will live a secluded life for the next 30 days. They've been granted access for just 1 month and are here to celebrate the blossoming of a fruit on an exceptional tree. The Korean pine. Unusually, one of this forest's most valuable specimens is also its most numerous. There are millions growing in this forest. But what makes this tree so unique and fascinating is that it doesn't blossom until the ripe old age of 30, taking a further 2 years before its fruit, pine cones, ripen. This event is patiently anticipated and much celebrated. It's September, and local villagers suspect a few trees in the forest might have ripe fruit. Their income comes from harvesting the cones, and so they set out to collect what they consider to be treasure. They need to isolate the trees bearing the most ripe fruit. But unhelpfully, it's nestled high up on its upper branches. The process is highly precarious, and equipped only with very simple gear, they plan to scale the 20-metre trunk. These men grew up in this area of forest and are experts at surviving here. He's fixed crampons to his boots to grip the tree and created a homemade design to ensure that the points don't change direction. but he wears no harness. He's fearless and confident. He's done this every season for years. The branches and foliage get thicker towards the top of the tree. And he reaches the summit in minutes. His friends on the ground can see the pine cones better than he can. They direct him to where they are, camouflaged green in the dense foliage. Incredibly, he's used up all this energy and risked his life for just a handful of cones. But restraint is the secret to ensuring future generations are able to harvest the fruits of this forest. Unfortunately, there are also some easy pickings from windfall. In the brief window when the cones are ripe, 600,000 kilograms of them will be collected across the whole forest. They take the cones to the village for processing, and the valuable commodity will be sold in cities around the world. While back in the forest, the cones that fall outside of the harvesting window, when no humans are present, will become food for the forest's animals. And the pine's seeds will spread and give birth to more trees. Such is the cycle of life. None of us would be here without forests. Yet this habitat, home to some of the world's rarest species, living in relative isolation deep in the heart of the forest, has been one of the fastest shrinking ecosystems on the planet. Man has long craved the most beautiful and rare of species, proclaiming them the most precious. But here in the forests of China, from the subtropical to the coniferous, major efforts are underway to protect and preserve China's endangered species. Vulnerable to changes in their homes, the environment, and shortages of food. And so daring to step out of the safety of their natural habitat. Only by understanding the mysteries that lie deep within these habitats can we know how best to support and maintain the extraordinary creatures who call the forest home.